What is the disaster Unity has gotten themselves into? And why does it not mean that Silksong is cancelled? And why does it also not mean that Silksong's release date will be affected in any way? All of these things will be tackled in this video, so buckle up, get yourself a glass of water, a little snack, and let's go. First up, what are the Unity changes and why are they so terrible? And why is this dangerous, especially for small indie developers? Well, as most of you know, Unity will now be charging 20 cents per install of a game that was created with that engine if the game itself has exceeded $200k in revenue, which basically hits every indie dev you know. Why is this shit even worse than Godskin do at New Game Plus 7, you ask? Which is definitely a totally normal question to be phrased in this exact manner. Well, not every install is counted, but every install by one user is counted as long as every install happens on a different device. That also means that if a user installs the game 3 times on different devices, the devs get charged 3 times. This is extremely stupid, like mind-numbingly dumb. This is only made worse by the fact that most indie devs price their games at around 15 buckaroos, with discounts to that already low price point driving the most sales. Stuff like Xbox Game Pass must also not be forgotten, as being on there also changes how much a dev makes per user that plays the game. If I only make an average of $5 per purchase, which is probably already a highballing estimation anyway, and then have to pay sites like Steam around 30% of those bucks, and then have to pay taxes as well, every 20 cents that have to be paid on top of that hurts, as professionals say, like a fucking bitch. Especially solo indie devs with decent success, like any game that sold between 10k and 100k copies, would be struck pretty hard by this change. Now, before we move on to Silksong, I have to mention that Unity plans to release an update on these changes. Will they double down? Will they revert the changes? Either way, the damage is done, the trust is broken. So this is why many think that Silksong will be affected by these changes quite drastically, and that it would affect the release date of the game, and that they are probably considering porting it to another engine or scrapping Silksong altogether. Here's why all of these are not the case. First up though, Silksong is not cancelled. Like some people think that only because Team Cherry have not publicly stated what they think of these changes, Unity has the power to single-handedly cause enough trouble for Team Cherry to cancel the game and develop something else in a new engine. This take is, and I do not say this lightly, a tiny wee bit totally bonkers. Like, I don't even know why we are talking about this and why such a vocal minority believes this to be the case, but no, Silksong is not cancelled. They're way too far into development to cancel a game because of some changes that aren't even in effect yet. Like, if you're a solo indie dev and you're making your first game Unity and you're 3 months in, yes, then maybe you should opt for a different engine, and maybe you'll even scrap your project in its entirety and start from the ground up on a different engine. But Team Cherry wouldn't do that because they're 5 years in at this point. Silksong's development started in 2018. What seemingly no one realizes is the very special position Team Cherry are in. Most indie devs struggle financially. Like, selling 10,000, 100,000 copies of a game sounds big, but the money that remains for the indie dev is very little. Now add on top of that the new fees from Unity, and that's something that can really threaten the livelihoods of people. But that is not the case for Team Cherry, far from it actually. Don't get me wrong, like, they struggled while developing Hollow Knight and persevered through what I'm sure were many hardships, and they have now earned their prize for that. Because while we don't know the exact sales numbers, we can expect Hollow Knight to have at least 4 to 8 million copies floating around on all the different platforms. Like, we are talking millions. Those numbers are insane for indie devs, and selling millions of copies of a game sets one up financially. Especially if you're a small team with only 3 core developers at the heart of it. So now they have this very unique position among indie devs and are probably one of the most financially stable indie development teams, only because their past project was so successful. And if you're looking at this success in proportion, to Team Cherry's extremely small team size, then it becomes even more evident that they are probably very stable financially and are in a good situation. While I think that Team Cherry would not like Unity leeching off of them, I do think that this would not hurt Team Cherry all that much, at least compared to those with like less prior financial success. So it would not be enough to seriously destroy Team Cherry financially. And I also don't think it will be ported to Unreal Engine or Godot for the same reason. After 5 years of development, porting everything to a different engine might create more troubles than it's worth, honestly. And many have said that at least it will affect the release date of Silksong, with even some of my colleagues on YouTube also stating that. So me disagreeing does not mean that I don't like them or anything, but just that I do not agree and I want to voice that opinion, because one of the most interesting facts in favor of my stance here is that historically speaking, Team Cherry do not give a fuck. Like, they released Hollow Knight a few days before Horizon Zero Dawn released and a few days before Breath of the Wild released, which, economically speaking, was not the smartest choice. But they still did it because they didn't want to have to wait a few months till the competition is less strong to release it, but they just wanted to get it out there, and so they did. And they will do the same for Silksong. They will release it when it is ready. They will not let some CEOs from Unity dictate or influence the release of Silksong in any way. I just cannot imagine that being the case. For games after Silksong, however, especially The Fearless Fox, which is the supposed game after Silksong, there is a possibility that they will switch the engine, not because of the money aspect, but because of the broken trust that Unity has caused, which means that no one can trust Unity, that they won't make even worse changes in the coming years. Also, we don't even know if Unity will exist in a few years. Like, at this point, it is a close race between Unity and Twitter to see who will self-destruct first. So to sum up, no, Silksong will likely not be affected by the changes, and the changes might not come anyway. But do you agree with me or not? Let me know in the comments or via carrier pigeon. Subscribe for more Silksong videos. I got a spicy one planned to come out in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. If you want even more stizzle for some reason, check out my Patreon for exclusive playthroughs for $1 per month. See you next time, and bye panada.